Okay, so this is another day with this carburetor, and what I'm doing here, basically just seeing if it's going to leak now, or if I have the float heights set high enough that the floats are actually seating correctly. And I've got it tilted over a bit because when it sits in the bike, it actually goes down a little bit. It's on an incline, or decline, I guess, and that's actually what allowed all the fuel to leak into the engine crankcase. So this is open. I'm not seeing any leaking, which is great. So I feel pretty comfortable that, let's say, even if the Petcock's not sealing, that the floats aren't going to let fuel pass. Now, I can't give as much pressure as the fuel tank would be giving, but this is still pretty good. So next thing I'm going to be looking at is the fuel tank. I'm going to pull the Petcock off of here and determine whether or not this vacuum line is actually allowing it to close or not. So here we got the Petcock pulled off, and I gotta figure out what this varnish or whatever this buildup is. I'll clean that up with some WD-40. And this is taking a look at the Petcock. It's pretty dirty. I'll clean the filters off and whatnot, get that buildup out of there. And I gotta pull apart the diaphragm to check that out. That's the part I'm most worried about. So I was actually able to disassemble this thing without tearing any of the gaskets or diaphragm, which is pretty good because I didn't think it'd go that well. So here's the Petcock itself, and what happens is this diaphragm piece would sit. I'll turn this sideways. Would sit this way. So there is a lip right there. That's where fuel's going to come in, and once it gets into this bottom chamber, it'll be able to come out the fuel out here. So what happens is this little guy, this diaphragm, it's got this O-ring seat on it. That's going to fit kind of like so. Now, this diaphragm, let's see if I can actually move it, is this circular piece. Well, not the diaphragm isn't, but this piece will move up and down whether or not there's vacuum pulled when this cover is over it. So when the piston is moving up and down and causing compression inside the cylinder, it's going to pull a vacuum. So we got the end of this hooked up to cylinder number 4. When it pulls a vacuum, it tells the system to start letting fuel through. So I'm looking to see if the seat in here was potentially dirty, but I cleaned it. It's tough to see through the camera, but I cleaned it up real well. It looks real good, and the diaphragm motion and everything when this was installed felt very good. The O-ring, I wish I could just replace it. I wish I could just replace this entire thing, but I don't see why it would have failed. I'd like a better O-ring on there, but that's not something I just have sitting around here. So got to get all cleaned up as good as I could. And I should say, lastly, there is a spring that would sit on top of here so that it should always be sitting in the closed position. And unless that vacuum's pulled, this has pressure or tension from that spring, and apparently it's not putting enough on. So maybe the cleaning I did will be enough. If not, I don't see that maybe just a new Petcock would fix this thing, but hopefully this works. One more thing I wish I could do, and because I don't know that the Petcock's working right, I'm not going to now. I see there's a little bit of rust inside the tank, and if you've ever used to derust a tank, Evapo-Rust, I swear by this stuff, it is the best. Yeah, it's the best. It takes rust off of damn near everything. It's not acidic, not to the point, maybe it's like a pH 6 or something, but it doesn't work by acid. It actually works, it has a chelate inside of it, so similar to hemoglobin, it bonds to rust, so iron oxide, but it won't actually bond to iron. So that chelate will just suck up the iron oxide, and you dump it right down the municipal water supply once you're done, because it's non-hazardous. So it's pretty slick. I really like it. What will happen is I will just fill this tank up. I'll leave it for 24 hours, drain all the bullshit out. It'll take all the rust out, and we'll have a brand new, squeaky, clean tank. Yeah, well, I'm here. Might as well cut a new vacuum line. This line is about 15 years old, so is it 15? Jesus, 16. All right. So interesting enough, I think this actually may have fixed it. So right now I've got it in reserve. So previously it was leaking by this point, and it's not right now. So if I switch it to prime, boom, it just opened. I'm going to get fuel that comes out. If I go to on, nothing. Previously, this was leaking all over the damn place. That's just what was left in it. Okay, so now we're in on. It was leaking at this point before, so feel pretty good about this. So we got a tank that doesn't leak, or the Petcock doesn't leak. Don't you screw with me right now. Are you leaking or no? Or was that just what was left in you? Let's see. I don't think it's leaking. I'm going to watch it. Okay, you get to live right there for a little while. I've got a set of carburetors. These are still full. The bowls are still full. I got to drain those out. And I'm going to put this stuff back on the bike and put some oil in it. And then see if we can get it going. Okay, so I got the carburetors put back in. That's pretty easy. Basically, you just take the carbs and fit them into these boots. And then the air box, you push into the other side, the intake on the carbs, and lock them down with these two Allen bolts. The trickiest part about this, and I did it actually okay this time, it didn't take that long, is getting this throttle cable hooked back up, just because it's such a pain, because you can't rotate the carbs in here much. Basically, you got to get this one on first. This one's pretty easy, but this one is just a bear. And I don't know, I got it in probably 15 minutes. Somebody who knows what they're doing could probably do it right away, but it's just not easy. And also the choke. So the choke will move and it'll push that slide across and open the choke on the entire thing. And the throttle cable. And as always, I hooked it up backwards the first time. But anyway, that opens and closes the butterfly valves on the carburetor. So we've got this sensor hooked back up, and this is something I don't have on any of my bikes that I know of. Maybe that one. I don't know. Haven't looked at that one much. It's kind of new. This is a throttle position sensor, and this is one of the things that I thought was a culprit the first time I was looking at this bike. And basically, it's just a potentiometer. And here, what it will do, it senses the position of the throttle, and I believe it actually affects the timing advance. So on something like this, it's got a mechanical advance on this 73. So basically, it'll move the timing up as you're trying to get into higher revs, or higher engine speed. And basically, it'll read between 0 and 5 volts depending on the position. And I tested this before. I know that this isn't the problem because it acted predictably, but that is one of the things I was looking at as a potential problem. This other hookup here is for the fuel position sensor. So this actually has a fuel gauge on it on this bike, so it's just a little float that sits inside of the tank, and again, it tells it how high it is. So getting pretty much ready to put the tank back on and drop some, well, it needs oil still. I'd let this drain for 48 hours, see how much of the gasoline I could get out of it. And one of my worries, and I might do this just because it might make sense, is to pull off each of the spark plugs, which I know are new. They don't have any time on them yet, but I may, just because they're so easy to get to. Pull them off, check the gap, see what the spark plugs look like, and maybe drop a little bit of Marvel Mystery Oil in the cylinder heads, because this whole thing was full of gas. I'm a little bit worried about starting it now because nothing is lubricated correctly, so we'll see. So I think that's going to be it for what I'm doing on this thing today. It's Christmas Eve day, night, and I should probably call it quits about now. It's about midnight. So what I did, the only thing I've done is to check the Petcock, and then the only thing I have changed from when the shop last worked on this, is the float height. I've set them from about 16, whereas most of them were, to they're all between 18 and 18.4. So factory set is 17 plus or minus 1. I may end up bringing them back down, but I wanted to make damn sure that it's not going to leak any fuel. So that higher float height is going to seat the bowls much quicker. Let's just have less fuel in the bowls. So that may turn out to be too much of a swing, but I want to be safe on this instead of sorry. So I feel like that's going to give me the best chance. I didn't bother, and not because I didn't want to, but I didn't want to change anything from, I'm going to call it factory, but whatever the shop set the carburetors to where they believed that this was working right, I didn't change anything on the mixture screws. I didn't pull any of the jets out, did nothing on that. So I think we should be okay. Well, I want to see how it ran, when they had it. So tomorrow, hopefully, if I get out of the family Christmas party quick enough, I will fill this big ass engine up with oil. I may run a compression test on it just to be certain about that, and see if we can get it fired up. Yeah, so I think that's going to be it for a day, and thanks for watching.